Tiger Stadium. This is the KLSU Tailgate Show, a student media in-depth breakdown of this weekend's LSU football game. Here's your KLSU sports team.
Welcome into the KLSU Sports Tailgate Show. I am your host, Michael Poggi, and today I am joined by William Gilreath and Tiger TV's Kai Hamilton. We are finally back here in the real Death Valley and ready to cover some LSU football. Of course, LSU will take on Louisiana Tech tomorrow night, but before we get started, how is everybody feeling on this fine Friday morning?
I'm feeling great, man. We're back in the stadium. They're painting the field. The number 3 team in the entire country is calling Baton Rouge tomorrow night, and I just can't wait to get this home schedule rolling.
Yes, man. I'm feeling locked in and ready to roll. There's just something about a Friday in Baton Rouge. I mean, we've got fans setting up their tailgates, the field being prepped, and you can feel that buzz that only Death Valley really delivers.
That's very true. We are super excited to be back here in Tiger Stadium as LSU is coming off a huge season-opening road win against Clemson last weekend, winning 17-10. This is, of course, the first time LSU has started 1-0 since the 2019 season. The Tigers are back in action tomorrow at 6:30 as they look to continue to maintain their swagger and energy against an in-state opponent. Well, first things first, let's just start talking about this LSU defense. Holding Cade Klubnik and the Clemson offense to 10 points on the road was definitely not something that everybody was expecting. The play from Harold Perkins all the way to the play from Mansour Delane, the secondary looked phenomenal, and you just may be able to give some credit to that front seven. But what is something that that you guys saw from the defense that we just weren't able to see in years past, especially the last 2 years?
Well, I think it starts with the fact that they look like a complete team. They played as a unit from the defensive line to the secondary. Everyone was getting involved. Everyone was doing their job. They had very few missed assignments, didn't blow any coverages. They just looked locked in. They looked like they wanted to be out there together. And that's what you want to see from a Blake Baker defense, especially with this tough schedule they got to play this year.
Yes.
I'll tell you one thing that stood out to me: disruption. For the first time in years, LSU's defense isn't really relying on a handful of stars to carry a load. We've got rotational strength across the board, especially on the defensive line. We've got, players like Jack Pyburn, Patrick Payton, and Jamari Butler coming off the edge.
Right.
And it's not just pressure, it's chaos. Right. Add in the return of Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins, and suddenly you've got a defense that can rotate fresh legs without losing intensity.
Right. And one thing, and I completely agree with you, but one thing that really stood out to me, and I mentioned earlier, was the swagger that this team has. And I talked to Garrett Nussmeier the week before the Clemson game in a player interview, and I asked him, what's kind of something that you've seen in camp? And he said that the swagger, the enthusiasm, just the energy in the building is different. It's changed, and especially in the defensive side. He said that this was the most competitive camp that he's had since being here at LSU, and that says something. When the it's not just the offense going down in fall camp, scoring like it was last year or the year before. The defense is putting up numbers. They're getting interceptions. They're forcing turnovers. They're making it hard on the offense. And I think, that's why the offensive line was able to do so well, because of all that practice, iron sharpening iron. And, I really think that the swagger that this defense has is something that we just haven't seen since you go back to, like, Derek Stingley. And you have a guy who's like on your defense and in your secondary, and there's no getting around him. You can't just throw the ball over his head and get there. Like, you have Ashton Stamps on the bench, who played almost every snap last year. That shows you how deep your team is and where the swagger is at on this team. Another big part of this defensive showing that we saw was a turnover. Turnovers have kind of been a slight, not the biggest issue, a slight issue, just a matter of when they get the turnovers in years past. But what does this defense need to continue for the turnovers to keep going their way?
I think it's all about pressure and positioning. So Blake Baker's aggressive scheme is built to wreak havoc, and we saw that in the opener. I mean, when the front seven collapsed the pocket and forces the quarterback into rush decisions, that's when the ball starts flying into dangerous territories. But it's not just about the pass rush. It's the secondary that has to stay disciplined with guys like Mansur Delane or AJ Halsey who know how to read those routes and jump those passes. So if LSU wants to keep fighting the turnover script or flipping it, they need to keep the energy high, rotations fresh, and communication is really big on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the Tigers defense that they forced 14 turnovers a year ago. But of those 14 turnovers, how many can you really remember as a play that stood out?
Exactly.
That Mansour Delane interception last week, that was a game-changing play. They need to continue to get these stops when it matters. They had these opportunities against USC last year. That last drive, they gave up a touchdown instead of forcing a turnover. I agree everything you said. They wreak havoc. How do you frustrate experienced quarterbacks? Yep. How do you make them uncomfortable? You get pressure on them.
Right.
That pressure then leads to that turnover, which then can lead to 6 points for the offense.
And you're so right. You talked about applying that pressure. You talk about, getting to that quarterback's face, disruption. That's what needs to happen. That front seven really just needs to keep disrupting to allow that secondary to work.
And it's really just smart football. Like, they know the game. They know what to do. It's just applying that pressure and making sure they're in the right place at the right time.
And I think the funny thing is you have all these transfers that are coming in, and you have these new faces that if you're just a casual fan, you're not really used to seeing in this new era of college football. But it's cool to see. It's cool to see when Mansour Delane's making a big play, and he made big plays at Virginia Tech. And now you've got Pyburn applying pressure, getting straight to the face, which is part of reason why Klubnik wasn't able to make some of the great throws that everybody's expecting him to make. But let's move on. Let's look ahead to the game tomorrow night. The Bulldogs bring in an offense that cruised last week in their 24-0 win over Southeastern. They struggled in the first half, but Trey Kukuk is the starting quarterback for LA Tech. Kukuk threw 13 passes on 18 attempts, throwing for 130 yards and a touchdown. Although the Southeastern defense is not going to be the exact same test that the LSU Tiger defense brings, but what does the Tiger defense need to do to just shut down Kukuk early and not give him any breathing room?
For me, it's all about pressure. From the linebackers to the defensive front, you have to get in his face early. This is a guy that only threw 18 passes last week. It's his first year at Louisiana Tech. He was a JUCO transfer. He's not necessarily experienced at this level. You can make him uncomfortable. They don't have a ton of confidence in him. They only threw the ball 18 times last week. If they had that full confidence in him leading that offense, we'd see that number in the 20s and the 30s. So, to me, Louisiana Tech knows there's issues there, and LSU can really take advantage like that by playing smart football, by making their plays. They need guys like P.J. Woodlawn, guys like D.J. Pickett, guys like Mansour Delane to continue to play lockdown coverage and just give maybe a guy like Jack Pyburn, maybe a guy like Bernard Gooden, someone up there on that defensive front to make a play for the Tigers.
Right, and tomorrow night, he's stepping into Tiger Stadium. So other than the defense that just held Clemson to 10 points, I mean, you've got a roaring LSU crowd behind that. But here's three things real quick to keep the game going, right? So collapsing the pockets fast. Kukuk took 3 sacks last week, and his O-line showed some vulnerability. LSU's front seven has the speed and power to make Kukuk uncomfortable from the jump. Then he can spy and contain the run. Kukuk ran 16 times for 48 yards last week. His mobile, and when he first reads breakdowns, he'll tuck and go, right? That's where Harold Perkins can step in and Weeks Wicks, and they've got to keep him boxed in and contained and force him to beat LSU with his arms and not his legs. And then disguise and then coverage bait throws. LSU's secondary is deeper and smarter this year. Delane and Halsey can bait him into risky throws if the coverage looks one way pre-snap and shifts post-snap. Kukuk hasn't faced this kind of defensive complex yet
in his entire career. And that's one of the things where it's like, for this defense, and honestly for the whole team, but especially for the defense, it's all about perfecting. It's all about getting ready for that next step. The LSU has talked about 1-0. Move on. We're not worried about next week. Worried about LA Tech. And that's right. And you need to be worried about LA Tech. But everything that you do in this game tomorrow night is preparing you for next week. Is preparing you for that game when DJ Lagway comes into town and hit in a whole different type of offense. So I think for this defense, you guys both hit it on the head. The appliance of pressure, and I really do believe that you talked about Halsey and you talked about Delane. I've been mentioning the front seven. It's going to be in the next question too, but it's guys like Bernard Good. It's guys like Weeks. It's guys like Jack Pyburn. It's guys that are getting into that pressure, that are disrupting that offense. If this Tiger defense is able to stop the run quickly, and able to keep Kukuk in that spy and not let him go anywhere, they're going to be able to force turnovers. They're going to be able to get this ball rolling quickly. And I don't really see it going anywhere else. But let's go back to that front seven. It seemed to me that during the game, especially during pass rushes, they just weren't necessarily getting to the quarterback right away. They didn't have a whole bunch of sacks. PJ had a sack early in the first half. I think there was maybe one more. But there wasn't a whole lot of sacks. But there was a lot of QB hurries, a lot of pressures, a lot of getting to the quarterback. Guys like I said, Pyburn, Bernard Gooden, Whit Weeks, Wes Weeks, Perk, many other guys, just applying that pressure, getting to the quarterback. What does the defense obviously keep applying the pressure? That would be the easiest answer. But what does the defense need to keep doing to keep applying that pressure, keep allowing these quarterbacks to, making these simple mistakes, and just for the front seven to keep dominating? And who is your kind of pick for who's going to be the big step up for tomorrow night?
So it's really about rotational depth and then keeping those legs fresh. I mean, Baker's defense really thrives on movement, like twists, stunts, blitz, all that.
Yes.
And then guys like Witt and Wes Weeks are executing those with precision, and it's forcing QBs to move off their spot, which is where that chaos starts. And then Harold Perkins doesn't really need to be a traditional edge rusher every snap. When he's roaming, he's spying, or he's blitzing, he's in unexpected angles, and it throws off those protections and opens lanes for others. His versatility is the X factor. And then this unit really looked connected last week. You could see the linebackers and linemen reading each other and adjusting mid-play and closing gaps together. That cohesion has to stay sharp, especially as the competition ranks up. If they keep forcing throws, collapsing pockets, and rotating with a purpose, that front seven will continue to be the heartbeat of this team.
I completely agree. I think you said it perfectly. What makes this defense so special is the depth they have, especially on that defensive line.
Yes.
They can rotate guys like Patrick Payton. They can rotate guys like Butler. And then they have that interior defensive front. They have guys like Dominic McKinley who we just overlook now because of how well Bernard Gooden played. And
so
that's
great.
Crazy to think.
I mean, if we were to put him in a game right now, I mean, that's unleashing a beast. I mean, the bro's already lifting, 650 pounds with a 35 vertical? That's insane right there.
But for me, my challenge for LSU's defense tomorrow is to not overlook Louisiana Tech. I think a lot of times you come off a big win like Clemson on the road where you beat a Heisman Trophy contender in Cade Klubnik, and you look so good, you can kind of overlook that next opponent, especially when they have that big game against Florida next week. So if they can continue to play smart football, if they can continue to stay locked in play by play, down by down, rep by rep, I think that they will cause a lot of havoc for Kukuk tomorrow.
I'm gonna add on to that real quick. When we were talking to the players and we were talking about kind of not looking over LA Tech, and they all of them they all are in agreement that it was Wes Weeks who talked about this the most. When they played Nichols last year and they were coming off a loss, and they played Nichols, they did not look good. They did not look good early. They did not look good early. They had the running backs moving all over them. They couldn't stop the run. The pass game was kind of struggling. The defense didn't look good, and it was a completely different situation. You were coming off a loss. You were coming off a heartbreaking loss, honestly, where you didn't look great, and everybody's kind of annoyed. But this is different. The vibe feels a little bit different in Baton Rouge, and I think this game is going to be different, and I think it all comes down to the defense, and stopping the run's my thing. That's the biggest thing, because we've seen what you can do in that pass game with how you were able to kind of like get pressure to the quarterback. We've seen your blitz. Your blitz has been great. Was great last week. We saw that. I want to see how that run defense looks. I want to see how quick you can get to that running back. I want to see, what that front seven can do. And then you talked about the depth on that front seven. How about the depth in the secondary?
Yeah.
I tell you, How about the depth in the secondary? I talked about Ashton Stamps earlier not playing a single snap last week when he played almost every snap this past year. I think we're going to see him tomorrow. I think we're going to see him tomorrow. I think he's going to get in there, and I do think he's going to show out.
But I think the difference with this team right here is the mindset.
Yes.
I mean, the Tigers are already coming in with something to prove.
Right.
Even from their 1-0 warm-up shirts, because they come in with the mindset that they're taking one game at a time. And even talking with the players on Thursday's press conference, Clemson has been their entire focus for the summer. And they're taking it 1 week, one game at a time.
Yep. And so really quickly, who's the guy on the defense? I already gave you one, but who's the guy on the defense? It could be secondary linebackers, even the line. Who do you want to see get an opportunity? Give me a quick reason why.
PJ Woodland, and here's why. I mean, he has intensive coverage and IQ and ball skill. I mean, he played 114 coverage snaps last season and just allowed 1 touchdown. He's physical at the line. He's quick, and he shows flashes against teams like Ole Miss and USC, and he can hang with those top 5, and top-tier receivers. And then in our Clemson game, that really set the tone early for defense identity all night. On Clemson's first drive, Woodland came in screaming through the B-gaps and registered a sack on Cape Klubnik. Not something you really expect from a quarterback, but that's the kind of versatility that he brings. And then he finished the night tied for the leads with 5 tackles. And all solo, added all tackles for loss, so that's really good. And that's just not solid production, it's impact. And he's really making an impactful scene on his level and where we can see his potential tonight and further on in the game.
Yeah, I have 2, Wes Weeks and Devon Keys, both guys that I think are going to be huge, especially against the run. LSU only allowed 31 yards last week, but what was their downfall last year? It was dual threat quarterbacks, and that we saw them struggle with Klubnik last week in some way.
In some situations,
I think Devon Keys is a guy who they're going to rotate in off the edge a little bit, and he'll play that linebacker role, but he'll also get up in that 3-down stance. And I think Wes Weeks is going to be big. They have to make their tackles, which is an issue they had last year, especially against nickels, against guys like Marcel Reed, guys like Jalen Milroe we saw. It haunted these LSU fans last year. They're going to want to see that concern that they might have shut down early tomorrow night.
All right, well, let's move to that LSU offense. They had some struggles in the first half against Clemson, but they were able to find their groove in the second and get just enough to hop over that edge. Garrett Nussmeier was 28 for 38 on passing attempts, throwing for 230 yards and a touchdown. Looked pretty good. They were also able to rack up 108 rushing yards, and they were able to get those yards in different ways, whether it was handing it off to Caden Durham or putting in packages with Xavier Thomas. The Tigers were really switching things up offensively, and you really like to see that as a Tiger fan. But what was one positive and one negative that you saw from the LSU offense on Saturday?
Well, I thought they managed the game really well. They got a lot of different players involved. You mentioned Xavier Thomas coming in that and rushing there. They had 9 receivers catch the ball. 9 receivers caught a pass last week. That was unheard of a year ago. One of those guys who didn't catch a ball was Nick Anderson. Could you imagine Nick Anderson not making an impact in that Clemson game 3 months ago?
No.
It would have been unheard of. So they executed the game plan really, really well. I thought Garrett Nussmeier did a great job with those pre-snap adjustments, and he's going to have to do that as the season progresses, and that's where his experience comes into play. He's a coach's kid, and I just think they just executed perfectly last week.
So one positive for me that really stood out was LSU's adaptability. In the second half, you saw Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly really lean into the creative play design, mixing in jet sweeps and Xavier Thomas downhill runs with Caden Durham, and even some tempo shifts to Clemson's defense off balance. That kind of versatility is just really what makes the offensive dangerous, and they didn't panic. They adjusted, and that's a sign of maturity.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I'd say that one positive I saw was, like I said, the movement of having Xavion Thomas. That's the biggest positive. Having Xavion Thomas in so many different packages, whether he was throwing the ball or you were handing it off to him or you were throwing it to him. Either way, it just showed his versatility, showed what you have on that offensive unit, and it's really dangerous. The only negative thing I saw was the little bit of conservativeness that they had in that first half. Just not really being, like I said, just being conservative. Just not going attacking, not really, taking your three. You're just aggressive in weird situations and conservative in weird situations. That's what I would say. But who is one guy on this LSU offense, I'm going to start first, that you would like to see a big game out of this time around? Mine, personally, is Juwan Johnson. I would like to see that again. They threw the ball to him every single time. They win that one drive when they threw it to him 5 times in a row, and they did the same thing. It was literally the exact same play 5 times in a row, and it worked 5 times in a row. I would love to see it. I think he scores. I think he gets a big game.
Mine is Treydas Green, and here's why. He's a mismatch nightmare. I mean, he's too tall for corners, he's too athletic for linebackers, and if LSU starts scheming him in the right places in the red zone, I mean, that's just a toss and catch and easy 6 points right there. Also, with his 6'7" frame, he's unstoppable.
Yeah, mine's Aaron Anderson. He had 6 catches, 99 yards last week, But this is a guy that he can do so much for LSU's passing game. They can hit him over the middle. He's got elite speed. It's incredible, and his height. You just lose track of him on the field. He's what, 5'10", 5'9". He's not a tall guy, but you lose sight of him because of his speed. It is just it's so elite, and I think he's going to have another big game for the Tigers tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I saw. So what's one thing from this offensive line unit that really stood out to you guys? My thing was just the run game. You haven't been able to run the ball in so long, and then right away you're handing the ball off, and we're getting through on the left side. The left tackle guy goes down, Chester comes back up. And then he gets out, and it doesn't matter. You were able to rotate those guys. BK talked about having 6 or 7 guys on that offensive line, which kind of worried me a little bit. But the fact that Caden Durham was able to run the ball, that really shows the grit that this offensive line showed. And I talked about in fall camp, they said iron sharpening iron. That defense that LSU possesses is the reason why that offensive line was able to do what they were able to do last week on Saturday.
So for me, I think it's the resilience and pass protection, especially in the second half of that game. Clemson brought pressure early, but this unit settled in and gave Garrett Nussmeier the time he needed to operate. That kind of mid-game adjustment shows maturity and coaching trust.
Yeah, and I think the reason they were comfortable playing 6 or 7 offensive linemen was because they trusted them. They weren't guys that they felt they had to play to give a guy a rest.
Right.
They felt like they were guys they could play
Right.
to give a guy a rest. And I think that's the biggest difference from a year ago. One guy I really want to shout out was Braylon Moore. That was great center play. That's probably the best center play we've seen from an LSU center since Lloyd Cushenberry in 2019.
And Thompson played amazing as
Absolutely.
well. Thompson was phenomenal. And it's all those guys that you're bringing in, and it really is impressive. We've seen the weapons that the offensive unit has, from Barryon Brown to Aaron Anderson to Treydas Green. What does Garrett Nussmeier need to do, not more necessarily differently, but what can he kind of change to make sure that the offensive impact for their skill superstar guys stays consistent?
I think it's getting everyone involved early. When Nuss spreads the ball around in the first quarter, it forces the defense to play honest. That opens up the playbook and keeps LSU unpredictable. And we saw it in Clemson. Once LSU picked up the pace, the offense started clicking. Nuss has the experience. Now he has to control the tempo. Speed it up when the defense is in the heels. Slow it down to protect the lead. That rhythm keeps skill guys in sync and maximizes their touches.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said earlier, they had 9 guys catch a pass last week. But I think what's going to be big is the opportunity they have tomorrow. You're playing a lesser, a non-power 4 team.
Mm-hmm.
You can open up the playbook. You can attack the middle of the field. You can get every guy you want to involved. You don't have to play as conservative as you were last week on the road against a top 5 defense.
And I like you said, getting to them early. I think that Treydas Green is not yes, Treydas Green is a mismatch. Treydas Green is not going to be a guy that's going to have 50 receptions this year. It's going to be a 25, 30 reception season for Trey'Dez Green.
He's a situational player.
He might have 14 touchdowns. Like, it's just one of them things where it's like if he's in the goal line and he's soloed up, they're going to lob it up to him. I think it's really going to come down to seeing guys like putting in with Bauer Sharp, getting the ball to Barryon Brown when we need to, getting that ball to Nick Anderson when we need to, getting that ball to Aaron Anderson when we need to, finding him over the middle, finding him in perfect opportunities. I just think that you have so many weapons that spreading the love, I like to call it the Drew Brees technique. Spreading the love, give it around, make sure everybody gets their name called, and that gives everybody moving. That gets the energy moving. That gives the vibes rolling up. And I think this is what that offense needs to really power them through the rest of the team. So pick one guy on this LSU offense that's going to have a big game and go ahead and tell me why.
Ooh, I'm going to let you take that one first.
Well, I think it's going to be Juwan Johnson. For every reason you said earlier, this is a guy that they've put him everywhere. Last year he was at running back. Then they moved him to quarterback in the spring. You can utilize him like a Taysom Hill in this offense because of how athletic he is. He can play a role as a receiver. He can get those check down passes. You can run screens with him. He's a guy that you can really utilize in third and short scenarios, and a defense might not necessarily know how to defend him.
I'm going to stick with Barryon Brown on this one, and here's why. I mean, he doesn't just catch the ball, he creates the play after the catch. LSU's offense struggled against Clemson early, but once they started dialing up quick hitters and letting Brown do his thing and work in his space, that's when the momentum shifted, and I really want to expect more of that in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bauer Sharp. I think Bauer Sharp is going to get a lot more touches. Like I said, I talked about, I think my two guys are Bauer Sharp and Juwan Johnson. I think those two guys are really going to have their game. The fans are going to get to hear their name a little bit more. I could see him having 2 touchdowns tomorrow. He's just one of those guys that's going to be there. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to block. He's going to run block. He's going to get those short, gritty catches. He's going to give you the extra yards. That's what he does. All right, let's make some picks. We've had some fun. Shout out Lee Corso last week doing his last headgear pick. So we don't have the headgear, but let's make some college game day picks. Unranked Iowa takes on number 16 Iowa State in a big-time rivalry matchup at 11 a.m. Who wins this one?
I have Iowa State winning it. They struggled in the first half against Kansas State, but this is a complete team. Matt Campbell's a great head coach. I just think they might not have enough offensively to handle Iowa State. They'll be able to limit them. They won't score a lot, but I don't think they'll score enough.
I'm going to go with Iowa State for this one, and that's because they have Betch. I mean, his poise, defensive control, he controls the game start from finish. Like, he's really the player you want for that game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Iowa State. I like the way that they've been running their offense, and I think defensively they're gonna make some adjustments and we'll get it done. Looks like we're gonna have to skip a few because we don't have enough time. But let's get to our main game. Give me your score predictions. Give me your game predictions for the big one on Saturday night, as there is an in-state battle here in Death Valley with LA Tech taking on number 3 LSU.
I have Nuss throwing for, let's say, 275 plus and 3 touchdowns. We have Durham and Berry combined for 150 rushing yards, 3 scores. And I think the score is going to be LSU 40, Louisiana Tech 8.
Yeah, I think LSU is going to win this game 45-10. I think defensively they're going to get to Kukuk early. I think they're going to score a lot of points. They're going to open up the playbook, get a lot of different guys involved, and I think they're going to put this game to bed early.
Yeah, I think it'll be LSU all the way through. I do think they cover that 37.5 spread that they put out there. I think it's going to be not close. I think LSU wins this one 45-3. I think it is pure dominance, and it's everything that this LSU fan base is needing to see from their Fighting Tigers. Well, guys, I think we did it. That will do it from here for us today. I just want to really quick thank the entire LSU communications team for allowing us to do this in Tiger Stadium, especially Michael Bonnet and Kent Lowe. Big thank you to our advisor, Jimmy Lloyd, helping us set everything up. Couldn't do it without him. Thanks to Will and Kai for all the help today. I'm Michael Poggi, and this has been the KLSU Tailgate Show.
This is Yakov from...